Three, two, one, let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode on the George Hubby podcast. I don't know if you guys have noticed today, but I have a new set. I hope it's nice. Let's say that. And yeah, we've got a pretty interesting guest coming up tonight. The topic I want to talk about has a lot to do with the current events. We're seeing a lot of war in the Middle East, a lot of war in the Ukraine. And frankly, I feel like when we watch news online or on TV, it's a bit too simplistic for my taste. That's why here, our guest of honor, I feel someone can offer us a better perspective on the matter, more of an insider perspective on the case of war and the military. And that is my new friend, Wilson Madrid. How are you, Wilson?
I am doing great, George. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for actually being on here today. I really appreciate it.
My honor.
And the thing about you, Wilson, we have a little intro for you here. I believe you are a staff sergeant in the U.S. military. You're involved in both Operation Iraqi Freedom 2003 as well as Operation Enduring Freedom in 2005.
Correct.
And yeah, let me know how that went.
Well, first of all, let me give your audience a little bit background, a little bit of background about me. So I was born in Central America, Honduras, and came to the U.S. when I was 16 years old to Miami, Florida. Yay, Florida! And then I decided to join the military, especially the Army. So to me, my experience in the military was great because it was something different, something that as a kid, I always wanted to be a soldier. So I enjoyed being in the military, and I think it was a great experience.
And what inspired you to become a soldier? Because I know, like, when you're a kid, you want to be one of three things: you want to be an astronaut, or you want to be a soldier, or you want to be a dinosaur. Two of those things are kind of doable, I suppose. But I guess what inspired me to always want to be a soldier was like, I want to say it was my dad, but it was actually like some documentaries on war I've watched: Rambo 1, Rambo 2,
Mhm.
Delta Force, Commando, Call of Duty. I'm not sure if those documentaries inspired you or it was something else.
Look, see, in my case, because I had a family member, I think it was a cousin. Yeah, I think it was a cousin that, well, not my cousin, but my mom's cousin, that he was in the Air Force, Honduran Air Force. And I always heard stories about him. And he died in a combat mission. And when, I don't know if you heard about the El Salvador and Honduran war.
I know they had a border conflict in the
Yeah,
90s, I want to say, or was it the 80s?
I think it was in the 80s. Yeah, when over a soccer game.
Of course.
That's funny. But yeah, going back to how I got inspired. So, see, hearing all those things about a family member being in the military and me playing with little soldiers, toy soldiers. So that inspired me to always wanted to be a soldier. But the one thing that really inspired me to become a soldier was when I was already in the U.S. I remember I was in high school, 11th grade, on a chemistry class when the 9/11 happened, and that was the trigger for me to decide that I really wanted, after high school, I really wanted to join the military.
I have actually a question about that because me when it was when 9/11 happened, I have no recollection of it because I was 7.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was a big deal for my parents in the Middle East, but for me, like, it wasn't in my scope of memories. But I wanted to ask, when 9/11 happened, were the people like right away ready to sign up for the military, like Americans, or was it like the whole thing was happening and then suddenly like the American government was like, "Hey, we need more troops on the ground. We need you guys to sign up." Like, was it a reflex or like a redirection?
Okay, so I think it was a redirection because I didn't see, especially in my being in high school, I didn't hear other people wanting to join the military. It was just me talking to myself in my inside and saying, uh, there are bad people out there trying to mess up the way of life that we have in the U.S. And I think I have now the opportunity to make a difference and go and defend this country that received me and adopted me as a new citizen.
Right. And how was the sign up process like? Like, because I don't know if these guys work on commissions and things like this, but I know in Canada we see recruiters always at like the university fair, the school fair. I know they've got an office downtown from us where you can just walk in the door, say, "Hey, sign me up, coach," or something like that. How was it more in the States? Did you have to go to the office yourself? Did you have to make a call?
I had to go and look for a recruiter. I remember doing that, but see, it wasn't because you would think like we just had an attack in the U.S. soil, and then you would think that they would be desperate to get people in. But I think the military already had um, the numbers to go out there and fight. Because I remember that I went to the recruiting station, and they had me take a test at the ASBA. I had to take the ASBA first, and then had to look at the results. And at first, I wasn't going to join the army. At first, I was going for the Air Force. And I remember I had a good score on my test, but I was disappointed because even like you mentioned, was it were they desperate to get people in or something like that? And no, because the Air Force told me you have to wait a year and a half to get in.
Jeez.
And I'm like, see, I don't know. I want to go now. So I was kind of, I'm like bummed. But walking down the street, I saw there was another office, U.S. Army recruiting, and I saw helicopters and planes. I'm like, okay, so does the Army do planes as well? Okay, and I went to check it in, to check it out. I'm sorry, and the guy told me, the recruiter told me, you have to take a test. I'm like, I already took it with the Air Force. Oh, let's look at the results. He's like, yeah, I mean, you can just get whatever job you want. I'm like, okay, so I want this and that. He's like, okay, that's gonna take time. I'm like, what do you have for like tomorrow? I was the one desperate. So he's like, okay, I had this job. It has to do with petroleum. I'm like, give it to me. I need to go in.
Did you want to join the Air Force because your relative was already in there?
That was back in my relative was back in Honduras in
Yeah.
Central America, and this is in the U.S. So
But like, was that your inspiration for the Air Force specifically?
yes, the Air Force. I wanted to go as a pilot.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been worse. I mean, apparently, like the worst thing you could do is join the U.S. Navy or something. And I
Right,
always see the other ones rag on the U.S. Navy. I always see like the U.S. Land Force, the Air Force. I'm always seeing these Navy jokes, and I'm like, "What's with the Navy?
and nobody likes the Navy guys. So yeah, and
Like, is
now
there
we
a specific reason? Like, just a lot of single men in tight confinements in a submarine, ten
right,
thousand feet
yeah,
underwater?
that's one of the reasons.
What happens in the submarine stays in the submarine."
Right, right, yeah. So yeah, I didn't want to do that. And people, yeah, a lot of jokes about the Navy. And now I don't know about the new branch of the military, the Space
Space
Force.
Force.
So I don't know. That's gonna be tighter and out of this world.
Yeah, that one's gotta be interesting. I love the part where they're trying to select camouflage uniforms for the moon or something.
Right.
But yeah, so the Air Force wasn't an option. You went to the military. How did that look like? You signed up. Did you have to do like fitness tests? Did you have to? Obviously, I'm pretty sure you had to do like a psychological evaluation.
Yeah, you have to go through a physical. They do a complete physical on you. Yeah, they do psychological test and physical. Oh, you have to pass your PT test, physical training test,
Hmm,
which is composed of sit-ups, push-ups, and then you have to run 2 miles in the least amount of time possible.
right. If I have a question, let's say you finish the test. But you were crying the whole time. Do they keep you?
They actually do. Yeah, we had a couple of guys. They were crying a lot, and even while they were in training, like the real training, yeah, and they still
Have you
made it.
ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket?
No, but I heard about it.
Do you know when they have the drill sergeant? He's always yelling at you. His job is to make you cry, basically, to toughen you up. Is that like a true thing, or is this like a movie myth?
No, it is. It is. Especially, I heard it's worse for the for Marines, but
Yeah,
in the Army, they're hardcore. I mean, they were back then. So I rephrase that because
they
right
were
now I
in the
heard
past.
crazy things.
I think David Goggins would dispute that. But yeah, so you finish your training. Actually, before that, I want to ask, how did your mother take the news?
See, unfortunately, I lost my mom when I was
Oh,
14 before coming to the U.S. That
oh,
was
my
one of the reasons
condolences.
why I migrated to the U.S.
Mhm.
So it was only my dad. He really didn't want me to join, but he's like, if you want to, go for it. I'm not gonna stop you.
Yeah. Because, like, the thing is, when you join the military, even in just like training sessions, there's always the risk of like an accident, an injury. Worst case, some people might like be in such a bad accident they die. So I guess like whenever you want to sign up, your family really doesn't want to see you go. I know my dad's a veteran, and his brothers are veterans. And when they had to sign up the war, they kept telling me like my grandma just like she lost it. She didn't want her babies to go fight in a war. But my grandpa also didn't like it. But I feel like there's this sense of being a man. I don't know if we still have it, but it seems to be in the past where like you don't want it, but you get it. Like you
Right.
understand the decision.
That's true, and I think we'll still have it because
Mhm.
that's the way I feel with my kids because I have two sons. One is 18 and the other one is 12. If one of them, because the little one, he likes the military, but he says he's not going to join. But even if he decides to join, I will 100% support him.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope there's no good reason to join, and if he does join, let's hope God keeps him safe.
Right.
So then you finish the training. How was it going to Iraq? I can't imagine they put you on business class or anything. How did they ship you off there if not Amazon?
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't first class. It was a C-130. Like how many of us? Actually, no. From here, from the States to Germany, it was really nice. We're riding not first class, but it was good. It was my first longest trip in my life. It was what 19 hours from
Yeah,
Maine to Frankfurt, something like that. 19 hours or 15 hours. I don't recall well. Well, actually, no, it was 15, and then four from there from Frankfurt to Kuwait. So yeah, um, it wasn't the best trip, but it was. I would say it was good. But then
yeah.
from
And
there, from Kuwait to Iraq, that was a whole different story.
did they take you by plane? Did you have to go through the desert?
No, we had to go, and let me give you a little background on that. So we had to
Give it to
go,
us.
yeah. So we had to go in LMTV, the light mobility truck,
Mhm.
and we didn't have protection. We didn't have armor. We had like 25 soldiers in the back of that truck, and worst thing is we didn't have a weapon. We just had a small vest, and then there were four guys with weapons around us, and there's like 25 of us without weapons. And yeah, and then we started getting shot at, and yeah, it was fun the first day.
So it was a nice welcome party, you
Right,
could
yeah.
say. Okay. So how did the rest of the tour of Iraq look like? Like you're a staff sergeant. What were your general duties? What was the daily life? Because I can't imagine that every 5 minutes you're in a gunfight, even though movies tell us that.
No, it's not really like that unless you're you're a scout, which is, you're in the front lines, or you're a 19 Delta, which is a scout, and infantry. Any 11 Bravos, which is infantry. Those guys, I take my hat off for them, man, because they were in the front lines every day. I don't know if that was, life like every day, just getting shot at. But sometimes I will talk to these guys, because I was doing my job. It was like more support, like behind the lines. But then I would say every week we had to go out the wire and do and bring fuel to the other army bases. And yeah, we had to be in the line as well, and we get shot at too, but not as much as these other guys.
Mm. Did it ever feel like not real? Like, did you ever look at yourself and you're like, I should be more afraid than this? Like, maybe I'm being a little too casual here. Because, again, when I would talk with my dad about his stories, like, he treated it like, things were normal, except for a few minutes, then things were normal again.
That's exactly how it feels like, because at first, when you're in a FOB, which is forward base of operation, you're just there. If you're not getting shot at, it's like you're somewhere. You're in the desert. But then we had to train in California, in Fort Irwin, which is a desert. So it felt like you were just another day training or whatever. But then when things started to get worse and getting shot at, or RPGs just coming in, so that's when you're like, okay, so this is the real deal. I need to look for cover and then get my weapon, get ready. Anything might happen. So yeah, sometimes it felt like that, and then you're back to the real deal.
What did you say? It's like that Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan till they're punched in the face.
Yes.
Because me, like, I always had this fantasy. Because every young guy, I don't know about now, maybe with whatever people watch on Netflix these days, but I know, like, if you're a '90s kid, you kind of had like the Rambo fantasy. You think you're the Terminator. You're gonna be like the Terminator, walking in. You're shooting your gun from the hip. You're just gonna be like defeating enemies left and right. But I fired a gun. Like, I've gone shooting on the shooting range. I've gone hunting. It shocked me, like, how not casual you can fire a gun, like how this is freaking loud. You're not going to hit everything you're aiming at, and then it's like I'm shooting a gun and no one's shooting at me, and it's already a disaster. Like, what if I'm out there, I'm sweaty, and people are shooting at me? Like, how can I get anything done? Like, was there any of that shock? Like, okay, training did not prepare me for, like, the suddenness of it.
Yeah, because I mean, I think because every generation, we had World War I, World War II, and then Vietnam, and now we had Desert Storm, and then Iraq. So I think they had that privilege to do that. Like back then, they didn't have, like we did, old armor Humvees. We had armor all over protecting us, and we only had one guy on top of the turret, just getting ready with the 50 cal or whatever weapon he had up there. So it's interesting what you mentioned, because it's not like that when you're outside the wire, unless you're doing foot patrol. Then there were a lot of those for the infantry guys, especially for the infantry guys, that they had to go into the towns by foot and just getting ready for whatever they had to face that day. And I believe they do had to face danger like that, and then shoot and have someone shooting at them from all directions, which is a situation that I never, like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was never into that type of situations. Me being on foot and getting shot at, and then I had to return fire. It was always me being in a vehicle getting shot at, and then we had to respond back.
Right. And what dangers were involved? Like, obviously with war, there's the slight chance of dying. It's a risk there. It's in the terms and conditions. But were there any other dangers? Like, I'm thinking mostly about Vietnam stories. like booby traps or ambushes or just sudden gunfights.
Yeah, we had a lot of IEDs.
Hmm.
So that was
Improvised explosive device.
improvised explosive devices. Yes, and yeah, that was the most common ones. And RPGs, just getting
Mm.
shot at from a distance with an RPG, a grenade, and what else? And just regular gunshots from far away. Other than that, the most common one was the IEDs, the
Mm.
explosive devices on the road. And for the infantry guys, I believe there was the ambush. So they most of them sometimes got ambushed.
Right. So now I want to ask, like, I guess this is more of a deep one. So when you're in war, there's two sides, right? You're fighting someone else, and in this case, I assume you're fighting like Iraqis. You're fighting. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're fighting Saddam's troops initially. Then, as time goes on, you're fighting Al Qaeda or other organizations like that. And here's what I really want to ask, because me, I grew up in Dubai. I went to school with a lot of Iraqis. I'm Arab. I'm not Muslim, but I'm Arab. I know a lot of Muslims. So, like, the Iraq war was kind of a big one that was always on TV.
Yes.
Do you fault the Iraqis for fighting back? Like, if you were in their position, would there have been anything you would have expected differently?
No, I wouldn't say that I can that I mean you have the right to defend your family, your land, and I wouldn't like having people come to the U.S. and try to take our peace. So yeah, always see the one thing about me is that I always put myself into. I always move myself to the other side and see how would I feel being on the other side, and that's most of the times that's what I did with the Iraqis.
Yeah.
It's just understand where they were coming from and putting myself in their shoes.
Yeah. And I'm asking this not to make like the questions hard or anything, but because when I ask veterans about war, it's mostly so I can understand the civil war we had in Lebanon. Because I don't know if it's a big awareness in America. Lebanon had a civil war from like the 70s till the early 90s. And like I don't know any Lebanese family that's untouched by it. So me as a kid, when I'm always asking my dad about the war, and when the younger you are, the less you want to answer your son's questions about the brutal reality. And you have children yourself, so I assume you'd understand his hesitation to do so. But as time went on, I would learn more stuff, like how basically a lot of the people he fought, the only difference between him and that person was either like religion or just different sides of a street. People would be fighting their brothers, not brothers, but like their neighbors. There was even cases where people would be fighting their cousins because they were in different factions. But in the end, you're just fighting another human, and like the only difference is you're just born in a different spot on the world.
Yeah,
So that's why, like with Iraq, I understand, like, when it came to leaders, like if we're talking about Saddam and stuff like this, obviously we can rag on the leaders. We can say, okay, look, this guy was like a bad guy. But then when it comes to just like the everyday soldiers, the people fighting on the ground, like for me, it's like that's just a regular Joe who war, unfortunately, like it in like some weird universal like sequence war, it was his area's turn for war. Did you ever feel that, like that connection or that empathy or putting yourself in that kind of shoes?
yes, I actually did, but not see that because there's two type of people out there. There were two types of people out there. The ones that didn't have anything to do with Saddam and his regime, and the ones just in the soldiers. And like you mentioned, someone that just like we did signed up for a job. Let's say that he needed a job, and the only place that he will get one, or the only place that he will feel that he was able to make a difference was in the military. And now you find yourself fighting against another human being that is just like you. Like you mentioned, the only difference might be religion, your what your background. That's it. But this is just a regular Joe, like just like me and you. And the good thing, at least in my experience, is that with those people, regular Iraqis, we actually had a great relationship. You know, we used to give out candy, chips, water, even MREs to just regular people. But then when it came to the bad guys shooting at us, of course we had to defend ourselves and shoot back. And but like you mentioned, yeah, it's kind of crazy that you're shooting at someone and someone is shooting at you, just a regular person, just like you, just defending his country.
Yeah. And like, did other people feel that way too within the U.S. military? Like, was it like a common enough thing? Because one of the phrases I remember reading is like, the best pacifist is a veteran. Like, did your experience in war make you and others probably in your same I don't know what they're called, troop or unit, like kind of feel similar sentiments?
Yes, a lot. Not all, but a lot.
Because even my dad, like him, like he said if he had to, he would do it again because he was defending his home, but like he was never proud of it.
Yeah, that's the best description right there. You said it. I would like me myself. I would do it again just because. And I wouldn't say I don't like the war. I don't like war. It's just I will defend my country because I believe this is my country, even though I wasn't born here, but I adopted this country as mine, and I will go back to wherever part of the world that I feel like is gonna need of my I don't know my experience as a soldier and do it all over again, fighting the bad guys, not just shooting at regular Joes on the street.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that these things happen. Sometimes I feel like it's a decision way above our heads, but then it's a consequence that's like right in front of us, no matter what side you are in a war.
Right.
But that's more the discussion aspect of it that I do want to get into later. But like basically, to again go back into your story. So you've done the tours of Iraq, you got all this combat experience, and I believe Iraq still took like over a decade to end. You know, the military intervention in Iraq.
Hmm.
But when did you get out of Iraq? Like what? Like when were you basically done with your service?
Well, a good thing that you clarified that you said the last word "done" with your service, because in some way I'm still back in Iraq.
Hmm.
So yeah, the service my last day was the what October 26, 2011. That was my last day of service. And Iraq, I still live in Iraq somehow.
Like it's still in your thoughts?
Yes,
Yeah. That's an unfortunate thing. Like, because I'm assuming it's not a positive.
it is not, unfortunately.
Does this also go with the theme of, again, like I don't want to just keep referring to music, to movies and video games, but I'll also refer to like I'm not even joking, like actual documentaries I've watched, actual books I read on mainly like Vietnam, World War II, World War One, where it's like the thousand yard stare.
I heard of it.
Yeah, like so basically like a lot of these troops they come back home. There's no way to like soften it, but like they've gone through a lot of trauma. They're, whether you want to call it like PTSD or shell shock, although I think shell shock's pretty outdated. I think that's more from like Vietnam era.
Yeah.
So you don't I'm not going to push you to go too deep into it, but could you give us an idea of like what it's like on the surface? And not just your experience, but like what you see in your fellow troops or other veterans you meet time to time.
See, it's and I'm not gonna go into details about what I saw and what I went
Mm.
through over there, but just back in the States and just trying to leave Iraq behind and just being back in the States. and I've seen struggle, not only in myself but in other veterans, in the sense that the military trains you to be tough, to be strong, and to be like the Rambo that you see in the movies. That he doesn't think about anything, just goes into fight, and that's the part which is, in my opinion, the hardest part of a soldier is to transition back to a civilian life once you're out of the service, and not think the way you were trained to think, because
Yeah.
you have to go through all that training that they put into your head, that you're a killing machine, that you are this, you're that, you hate the enemy, you're gonna make the enemy die for his flag, not you for yours, and all that. So it is hard to make that transition back into the civilian world, and that's when PTSD starts to hunt you every day and every night. And I believe one of the reasons why we have that's the common uh, factor right now affecting most of the veterans, call it Vietnam and Iraq, Afghanistan. It's that mentality that is ingrained in our brains, that we are soldiers, we are going to fight, we're going to kill, we're going to do this and that, and then transitioning back to being a regular Joe is almost impossible if you don't have the right, if you don't seek help and get the right professionals in your team.
Right. And I want to ask, when it comes to PTSD, and like for me, like when I think of like war, I think like real PTSD, because now these days everyone claims to have PTSD. Oh, my dad yelled at me, PTSD, or like the
Yeah,
exam was too hard, PTSD. But like I think real PTSD is reserved for like veterans, victims, like victims of like assault or bad houses, things like this. To me, that's real PTSD. When it comes to war and you're doing your tours of service for any army, do you think PTSD can be avoided if you're still expected to be on the front line fighting? Or
no,
it's like, no, it's you can't.
impossible, impossible. If you're in the front lines, it is impossible. So
Mhm.
that's why I believe every veteran that's been to war has some type of PTSD at different levels, of course.
When they come back home, because like again, it's like you said, you're turned into a soldier, you're turned into a fighter. Some people would argue like you're turned into a killer, but I think that's too simplistic and like movie to say you turned into killer. You're basically turned into someone to follow orders. But is it fair to say they never really train you to turn it off?
They
It's
don't.
like we got you in the war, we used you up. Now it's time to go back and like we're just letting you go.
No, yeah, they don't. They really don't. And I think that there should be some type of program that allows veterans, before just putting them out on the street or even just letting them go from the service, to really work on that. There are some tools, but I don't think that's enough. What we have right now in place to really, and even if we did, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think there will be a full transition. You will
Mhm.
still, because we have a saying in the military: once you're a soldier for life. And I do believe that, because some things that will never change, and even if you try, they just won't.
So it's something you have to kind of live with.
Yes, you have to learn. You have to readjust the way of thinking, and yeah, it is tricky. It's tricky. You have to go through a lot of therapy to finally understand what's going on in your brain and what's going on with your mind.
And I want to ask, like, do you feel like veterans, because this is a huge issue even here in Canada where I live, do you feel like veterans are getting the right help? And I'm asking this because if you look like, again, in media and stuff, when you think about homeless populations, you see a lot of them are veterans on the streets. They're either now drug addicts, they're alcoholics. You always hear them talk about their stories like, I can't sleep anymore. They can't be around balloons because if a balloon pops, it triggers something. And like for me, I think that's pretty sad that these guys gave away like the best years of their life and the chance of a healthy mindset for their country. And then like it appear you know more than me, but for me as the average Joe, it appears to me that like when they finally came back, we no longer cared about them. Like they did what we needed them to do, which was like fight in a war, and now they're back and they're just like a bad reminder of something we were all involved in, but only we, the guys who didn't fight, can escape the consequence.
Yeah, so it's sad that they're trying, but I don't think is they're doing enough to take care of soldiers or veterans once we are out to service. There are, like you mentioned people in the streets being homeless and being drug addicts and all that, and that's just part of what we just talked about, PTSD and not being able to make the full transition because you're still stuck somehow. Your mind's still stuck somewhere else, not in the present time and place. So if you don't have the courage, because we've been trying that, and I think this is the problem. What I'm about to say, that's a huge problem that you mentioned that you get trained to go to war and to fight as a soldier, but when you come back, there's no one training you on how not to be a soldier anymore. And I believe there is help, but there's no way to fully transition to that. And it's sad to see fellow soldiers and veterans being a drug addict, being on the streets without a home. But in reality, there are so many programs out there that are willing to help. It's just many times we don't know about what's out there because it's not being advertised a lot like it should. Being put out there and see you are a veteran, you should do this, and that because there's this, and that. But I don't see that a lot on the TV. I don't see that on the news. So that's a problem. And another big problem is since we're being trained to be tough, to be able to take pretty much anything and to be a hardcore and all that, like the Marines and Army, being a soldier. And we know we have a problem, but we don't want to seek help.
There's a stigma with it, like it's seen as like a
And
pussy
just,
thing to do, to
yeah,
be a
and
soldier.
we have a saying, just suck it up and drive on.
Mhm.
And that type of mentality is what I believe has a lot of veterans out there without a home and doing drugs or just playing on the streets. And it's sad because there's so much help out there. There are so many programs that can help you out, but you just have to stop being a soldier for once and say, see, I'm vulnerable and I need help. Please help me.
Right. Is that what worked for you? Because when I see your life, Wilson, like I don't think we're gonna ignore that. I don't think like I don't think like you've been like rendered dysfunctional by this whole experience. And like just 3 weeks ago, I was on a seminar where you were actually like giving like legitimate financial advice and coaching people on setting up businesses like this. So you came out of war, and here you are leading as normal-ish a life as you can. Can I ask what worked for you? Because even with my dad, he seems to be like he's experienced war. You know, he's been involved. He fought on the streets, and then like you could never speak to a more calm person. And when I ask him, well, not even when I ask him, when I look at him, I'm like, what's his thing? It's prayer. You know, he prays every day. He reads his Bible, and like I feel like that gives him a foundation to in which like he stops any of the other stuff affecting his daily life. So with
And
you, I want to ask like, what's your thing? What's your foundation?
see, in my case, see, because it's you mentioned and it's good in a way that you said that I see you having a like a normal life and you're doing this and you're doing that. And in a way, that is what keeps me busy, keeps my mind busy from thinking about some other stuff. So that's what I try to do a lot of, try to keep my mind busy doing something. And one of the things that has worked for me is just nature. I'm big in being in contact with nature. And the mornings, every time I wake up in the morning, is the first thing I go for a walk or even a bike ride and just enjoy the sun, just sunrise, sunsets, when you have a full moon and all that, just being in the woods. So those things I think help me mitigate the anxiety, the all the things going on in my life. So it's especially not given PTSD and any other intrusive thoughts the time to just take over my life. That I think that's key.
Right. So like what for veterans coming back, you recommend a more like relaxed life?
Yes,
Like not live in a city, not think you can just resume as if it was always like this, but to like take your time to I feel like because me like I have my own issues, nothing close to what soldiers deal with, but like I feel like it's something where you have to accept like you're not going to be who you were like 5 years ago again,
of
but you
course.
will still learn to have a life.
Yes, sir. That's the way it is. Once you first you seek help and you know tell yourself, I do have a problem, I need help. And once you get the help, you're gonna start connecting and trying. Like I said, you're not gonna go back to normal. That's impossible in my opinion. But you're gonna learn ways, you're gonna find ways to mitigate the anxiety. And in my case is sleep has been a great problem. So, but it's getting better with some other things that I'm doing, but not. And I don't think it's gonna be 100% again. But yes, connecting with nature, I think it worked for me. And I've seen other veterans trying horse therapy, just working around animals like horses, dogs. Sometimes many soldiers, the veterans, I see them. They have a support system from a dog. So
Service dog.
yeah, service dog. So yeah, I think it's just connecting with something or someone, and that helps.
Great. And like, yeah, because like I feel like people always think like war is fancy and stuff, like it doesn't mark you because they've watched like Rambo 2 or 3, where like Rambo's the hero, he's fighting. But I don't know, have you? But I feel like a lot of people haven't like paid attention to the first Rambo movie. Have you seen it?
I was what 7 years old when I watched it, so I don't remember most of it. Just I
It's
enjoyed
it's the
the
it's the movie like people always forget because he's not in Afghanistan, he's not in Vietnam, he's not in Cambodia. In the first Rambo movie, basically John Rambo is just like homeless, walking all over the United States, and then he's in this town, and like no one knows what to do with him because he's suffering from severe PTSD. And like then he goes like insane, and he fights the town because they beat him up, and like that's not how you deal with a person going through PTSD. And the whole point of the first Rambo movie, I call it the only anti-war Rambo, because like the whole point of that movie was John Rambo was traumatized by his experience. People did not know how to deal with him, and that people, and I think the biggest point was like people did not want to be confronted with what happens after a war, where a large segment of the population deal with trauma, and like it's a hard transition back to life. Because I again like there's a lot of like when people like are anti-war, I feel like it's more like they're anti-military, anti-authority, anti-soldier. For me it's like the real anti-war is like the pacifism my dad adopted, where it's like, no, I'm ready to be a soldier again, but war is bad. Like I don't think it's as simplistic as that incident. in the 70s, I believe, when like a large group of like US prisoner of wars came back from Vietnam, and the first thing they saw instead of their loved ones, instead of therapists, was just a bunch of people calling them traitors, murderers, killers, like dogs. And
Yeah,
it's like, look, we can hate the war, but we shouldn't hate the human.
true. Yeah, 100%
Yeah.
agree.
And then following off that, like now I want to take away from the veterans. I want to focus on like war. Your experience, your tours in Iraq. I'd like to ask you what perspective did it give you on war? Because I feel like unless you're in it, you're either like super pro war, where you think it's fun and cool and you're a hero and amazing and it's a video game, or you're so anti war where you don't realize like a big part of war is people defending themselves.
Yeah, so I'm on the side of anti-war. So I war is not fun, first of all, and is not good because what we talk about at the beginning, it's just destroying people's lives in both sides, on both sides, the enemy and like you said, we were just fighting someone, a regular Joe, just like you, a human being that has a family. So there's nothing good about taking someone's life that has a family waiting for him or for her. And yeah, so I'm anti-war,
Yeah.
even though I will do it all over again, like I said, but in a different, with a different mindset.
Do you feel like the media kind of makes it like too light, like they trivialize it?
Yeah,
They make it sound so easy to get into, and like it's always like everyone like says like it's a just cause. You know, it's a we're saving people, not like, oh, this is terrible.
we're not saving people, we're just destroying people's lives in all senses,
Mm.
right? Going to war. And I'm not saying that we don't have to fight the enemy, we don't have to fight the terrorist. I am saying war itself, just what entails to go to war, is not good. It is not. And I've been to two, I mean, the same place, but at two different times. And it's not fun. And it's not, it doesn't, other than just, fighting against terrorists and people that attack our country. And yeah, I'm not going to go into some other reasons, but yeah, it's not good.
Has it also like changed the way you just see like regular life? Like if you see like a movie, you're like, what a joke, that's it's nothing like that. Or when you see people having like they think they're warriors, like fighting on their keyboard online to strangers anonymously, like do you ever just like look at all that and you're like, bro, this is ridiculous. It's nothing like reality. You guys are fighting over the dumbest reasons.
Yeah, that exactly what's going on right now. Nowadays, people are fighting, like you said, hiding behind a cam or a computer, not a camera, a computer, because they don't even show
Camera.
their faces. And yeah,
Yeah. Anyways, Wilson, I'm really thank you for your story. We're now going to segue into like more of the conclusion of the video, because this channel is like for me, it's for millennials and Gen Z, like people my age or younger. And I'm always happy to have guests like you who are older to hopefully like teach us the wise lessons. But for me, it will always come down to like looking at my generation. And from the point of view of my generation, compared to the people involved in like the Iraq wars, Afghanistan wars, compared to people in, I don't know how far back you want to go, like Kosovo, Bosnia, Vietnam, Korea, World War One, World War Two. Let's go all the way back to the Civil War. From my point of view, I feel like we're weenies, we're squishy, we're kind of soft. So
see,
like I don't know
go
what to say. Like you, as a guy who's experienced combat, who's experienced like the training, the drilling, do you see this generation as like kind of a soft generation, or do you feel like we there's no more real reasons to truly like fight. So we're not our, so my generation, like we're not really preparing ourselves for a possible reality of war, of defending ourselves or anything.
So see, assessing the state of an entire generation is kind of complex. So it's a complex task. And in my opinion, whether a generation becomes soft or not often is kind of subjective, depending on who you ask. I'm gonna give you my opinion, and I think this generation, yes, is become soft in many ways, but at the same time, I think is I don't want to say it's good because I think it's not, but this generation is taking into account a lot of things. Like we were talking about PTSD, so we're gonna go. They're more. They have different characteristics. Like they're more compassionate. They're more. They are thinking now. They take into account the mental health and so many other factors. But at the same time, that is making us soft as a society,
Hmm.
and that's not good in my opinion. And I don't know if you heard this saying that goes that hard times create strong men creates good times, but good times create weak men.
And weak men create
Weak men is going to create hard times, and I think we are at that last sentence right there. We're having
hard
good
times brought about
times.
by weak men.
So
Yeah, I I I really agree with that because I feel like let's be honest, the economy ain't great, whether you're in Canada or the States. It's becoming harder to afford stuff. It's becoming harder to start a family, to find a spouse, to buy a house, to like, bring forth the next generation of people. And the people running us, I think most of them have never been in war. I don't know about the state. I feel like you have some veterans in the office, but Canada, like I can't even name one. Definitely not our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And like they're always talking about getting involved in other people's fights. Always talk about like, no, we need to be involved in this war. We need to send all our money overseas and things like this. But yeah, I feel like we're definitely in hard times that were brought about by weak guys who I feel they've never really been exposed to the realities of like war and conflict. Because there's an expression we have in Lebanon why we have such crap politicians. Because in Lebanon we got a ton of corruption, and the basic saying is like all the good guys died in the war, and all we're left is with the people who I don't know they got sent overseas to like chill in France, or like daddy would never let them in the front lines or things like this. So it kind of I feel like it leaves you blind and it leaves you with like very little empathy. Whereas when I talk with you, Wilson, when we're talking about your experiences, and even when I talk with my dad, and one time, it's a story for another day, but I talked with a Gulf War veteran when I visited Florida in 2016. Like I've never met more not empathetic people who are full of empathy. You know, like I feel like no matter what side on a war you fought, like as a veteran, you relate to veterans all over the world. Like we'll always see like these videos of like Vietnamese war veterans from the States visiting Vietnam, visiting the old villages, meeting those veterans. We'll see like even like a Japanese veteran and a US veteran like who fought in one of the islands, like talking to each other. And I feel like there's this like comradeship between you guys that makes you like the real pacifists, not like a trendy hashtag pacifist on Twitter, like, oh, I'm just going to like smoke some weed and then not take a shower pacifist. Like a real pacifist who's like, I'll do it all over again if I have to, but I really don't want to. And the reason better not be a bullshit reason.
right. Yeah, like the nonsense that's going on, when people that I see people fighting over just we just had, like you mentioned, we need more empathy in this world. and just recognizing people's differences, like different religions, different cultural backgrounds, and all that. So we need more empathy in this world, so that we can just we all live in a peaceful world. That's what we all want. And see, I went to war, and I'm asking for peace.
Yeah. But I guess that means people should really consider your words because you've actually seen it. So now I want to ask you basically like the final question of the episode as we come to the conclusion. What would you say to someone, whether American, Canadian, Lebanese, if they want to join the military?
Okay, so and to anyone out there in the around the world, that my advice will be, if you really want to join the military, and you are for sure nothing, you really don't have any doubts that you want to join the military, go ahead and do it, but do it for the right reasons, not just because what's going on TV and what's going on in the Middle East and all that. Do it because it's something that where you're going to be in a position where you can make a difference. Because even though you might find yourself at war, you can still make a difference out there. And I believe when I was out there, I did in a way, because I didn't allow myself to treat others just because I was at war, treat other Iraqis like my enemies. So allow any position that you might hold in the military to make a difference in people's lives. And if you really love it, go for it. Because the military is a good place where you're going to find discipline, you're going to find respect, honor, and you're going to find yourself surrounded by people that you never met in your life, but you guys came together by chance, and now you find yourself taking care of each other, and that's something that I will always treasure in my heart. Just my fellow veterans that I will definitely go back to war with for the right reasons, not for the bullshit that's going on right now.
I 100% respect that. And I feel like once my dad and my uncles watch this video, they would completely agree with you.
Yes, sir. It's just the truth, man. That's going on out there.
Yeah. So, Wilson, I really want to thank you for your time. I also want to give a shout out to George for introducing us to each other because it was a very serious topic, but I enjoyed this video. Like, based on my like family, like I know a lot of veterans in my family, and like based on how the war affected my country, the civil war of Lebanon affected my country, I always have a, like I always have I don't want to say a fondness. You guys aren't puppies. I'm not gonna say a fondness for veterans, but like I always have like a consideration for veterans. I feel like it's really like people with a perspective. It's a very genuine, legitimate, and unique perspective, but the price of that perspective is very expensive
Yeah,
on your life.
it is high. Yeah, but it is in a way. Is I think it was worth it.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Wilson. Appreciate having you on. Is there any social media you want to share to the people out there? Is there anywhere people can find you or follow you?
Yeah, I do have so on the social media, I do a lot of videos trying to, like, just like George. I shout out to George out there because he's doing a wonderful job, and thanks to George, we met, and I think that we're gonna build this great relationship, a friendship from now on. That shout out to George. Yeah. So the thing is, see, my wife is the one pushing me to use the social media. I was trying not to, but she's the one pushing me to put out content mainly in Spanish. I'm doing most
Yeah.
of the content in Spanish because my followers, they most of them speak Spanish. I hardly do anything in English, but I gave my I'm into a mission to educate my community, Spanish Latino community.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll have it all down below. And your wife's got the mind for strategy.
Yeah, she's man. I love this woman because she's wonderful.
Yeah. Shout out to Wilson's wife.
Man. It was
Perfect.
my pleasure being here. I really enjoyed it.
And it's my honor to have you on. So yeah,
Thank
guys, if you want to follow Wilson out there, check out his social media. The links are going to be down below. And guys, as always, if you haven't already done so, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, spread our social media, because doing so lets us be exposed out there and bring on amazing guests. Hint, hint.